What's going on, guys? It's the first day of fall here in Arkansas. Beautiful day. We're going to install a lift kit on a golf cart. This will be a 6-inch lift kit, and the lift kit that I have came from Amazon. It's made by, well, it's a company called EZGO Electric, something like that. It's the same 6-inch lift kit that several other makers are selling on Amazon. You can get the same lift kit on eBay. But they're all pretty much the same. They have a drop axle for the front and a block system for the leaf springs. They range anywhere from $79 to $109 online. They all have one thing in common that I've researched so far. They all come with horrible or no instructions, and you guys can learn along with me. I've never installed a lift kit before on a golf cart, but I've done a lot of work on this golf cart. As you can see, we're in a rebuilding stage. I have a video on this front steering box. I just rebuilt that. It should be on the channel. Let's get to it. All right, so we have a parts list. And 1 page of instruction. All in print. Nice. Just taking inventory. We have the 2 rear lift mounts. We have 2 steering risers. We have the front axle. We have, let's see, these are the rear shock plates. 2 front spring plates. And a bag of hardware. So it looks like we've got everything here that's in the picture. First thing we need to do is we're going to jack the cart up, put it on jack stands. We're going to remove the wheels and tires. A 4-ton jack is obviously a huge overkill. Instruction number 1, jack up the front end of the car and remove the wheels and tires. It does say car. And check, we've removed the wheels and tires. Number 2, remove the tie rod joints from the spindles. Okay. All right, so we have a cotter pin we need to get out. All right, now that we've got the nut off, we've got to drive this tie rod anchor out of the spindle. And there are a couple ways to do that. Most people, if you have it on hand, would use a pickle fork. And that just goes right under here. And you just pop it loose with a hammer. If you don't have a pickle fork, you can try to drive it out with a punch. I normally take a punch and drive out the stud that way. Make sure that the end of your punch is a smaller diameter than the bolt. Otherwise, you'll mess your threads up. Boot. man, it's that easy with the pickle fork. And we didn't tear our boot up, so that's good. We're working on the second tie rod. All right, so step number 2 is done. That's removing the tie rods from the spindles. Number 3, remove the spindles from the front axle. Clean and lubricate these bolts for the reinstallation of the spindles. Seems simple enough. What I really need, sweetie, is a producer and editor.
Sounds like a divorce waiting to happen.
My wife's not willing to produce and edit my videos. So we're going to take this spindle off now that it's free. I want to point out this Zerk fitting right here on the spindle. Is just probably commonly overlooked on your golf cart. And that's a very important fitting or grease point to keep greased. What do you guys think this bolt is? Anybody want to guess? 11, bigger than 3/4. 13/16 maybe? Let's try that. Well, I was wrong, it's a 1 inch. We've got a cotter pin we need to get out. The bottom one, I don't think is a 1 inch. Alright, the bottom one is a 15/16. All right, that's got a grease channel in there. That's for the Zerk fitting. We'll get that cleaned up and re-greased before we put that back in. So now the spindle should be free. Okay, step number 3 is done. That was removing the spindles. Moving on to number 4, it says remove the front axle from the leaf springs. Clean and lubricate the bolts for new axle installation. What it's telling us to do is remove these clamps here that hold the front leaf springs onto the axle. It's not telling us anything about the shocks. You guys can see, obviously the shocks have to be removed as well because they're attached to the front axle. But the instructions do not say that. But we're going to do it. We're going to go ahead and take our shocks all the way off because we have new ones. I'll go ahead and pull the shocks off first. That way we don't have the axle dangling from the shocks. Try to do it that way. All right, so now we're going to remove the leaf springs. Let's see, it'd be better to have that in case it turns. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Oh, those aren't bad at all. That bottom plate. I'm gonna leave one in on this side until we get the other side loose. So this one I just took out was already loose. The threads were turned probably 2 turns. All right, front axle should be free. And there we go. See the difference there in the axles. Then the new axle doesn't have this recovery hook on it. I wish it did. If you'll notice that the spring plates are on the bottom of this old axle. So this old axle set on top of the springs. And then the new axle, the spring plates are mounted to the top, so they're going to have to go under it. And if we read the instructions, let's say we're on number 5. It says install new axle using the bolts from the old axle. Okay. Number 6, mount the leaf springs to the new axle using stock bolts and the new spring plates. 5 and 6 are saying the same thing, except using the new spring plates. Which we have new spring plates. I'm not sure why we can't just use the old spring plates. We have the new ones, and they're just going to go on top here. But again, why couldn't we have just used the old ones? Everything's the exact same thing. I don't think you wouldn't want to double anything up. That seems like a waste. Maybe we'll use these to weld us in a recovery hook or something. We have some new neighbors that moved in across the street, so we're trying to be quiet. They've got a barking dog, so we don't feel too bad. Yeah, we're those people in the neighborhood. All right, now we can move on to the next step. We need to put the shocks back on, but remember that's not in the instructions anyway, so. All right, we're on number 7. Reinstall the spindles to the new axle. All right, so I'm gonna get these bolts, these spindle bolts prepped to go back in. You can see that they're nasty and tacky from lack of grease. We'll get these cleaned up, get them greased up before we put the spindles back on. All right, that brass washer, remember it went up top. And let's see, it's gonna go that way. And there's quite a bit of play in that. Let's check it against the old axle. Definitely a little more. Okay, so we were on number 7, reinstall spindles to the new axle. Got that done. Now we are on number 8, install new steering riser. That's these. It doesn't give us any instruction on how to install them, but it should be fairly straightforward. So that riser has a bolt hole here and then one here. I'm assuming the only thing it could do is set I'm gonna have to tap it on there. Install the back first. Tap it forward until I see that hole. Looks like I've got it. So we have a bolt that'll go down through here to hold it on. And then we have a compression bolt here that'll come through the back. And then a tie rod will set into that new hole there in the riser. So we have this bag of bolts. It doesn't tell us which bolt to use, but all of them are pretty much the same size except for two of them. I'm going to assume these two long ones go here in these risers. So let's see, we know that the shorter ones can't do it. It's going to have to be these two long ones. Go through there. And then we'll have one. It'll go through here. And then we have lock nuts. All right, so that riser is on, and then the tie rod, we just mount right there. I gotta put that dust boot on it. We'll get those tie rods tightened down after we get the other riser on. All right, so I got the tie rods just sitting in there. I haven't tightened them. A couple of things I want to show you real quick. One, on the instructions, it just simply says attach tie rod ends to steering extension. We're about to do that. Securely tighten all bolts. We're about to do that. Install new wheels and tires. Lower the jack and put car on the ground. Set toe in approximately 1/8 of an inch. That's the last of the instructions. It's not working. Well, folks, here's what the instructions won't tell you. The reason we're having a problem getting this to seat properly, so I can get a light in here. If you can see, you see that bolt right there is not all the way seated. It's grounded out on that sleeve. That shouldn't be happening. The reason that's happening is because this top riser is not as thick as the original spindle. So the way to fix that, we're going to have to fill this gap in with washers. All right, so my solution is 3 washers. 3 could be too many, but 2 may work. I'm going with 3 that I had on hand. I got 3 for each side. So we're going to put the 3 washers under here, and then tighten it up, let it seat, and then if we've got enough clearance to get our Carter key in, then we'll be in good shape. And yep, so our hole there, should be able to get that key in there, no problem. Three washers. It's tightening down nicely. See if I can get to my key. We've got that fixed up now. Here's another look at it. You'll need those washers. Okay, so we're pretty much done with the front end. The only thing we need to address now is the toe. Our front end is severely out of alignment now. And if you look at the instructions, number 13 actually says set toe in at approximately 1/8 of an inch. So whether you were going to do that or not, if you get into this situation that I'm in right now, I have to. If you'll notice, this hub here is pointed towards the rear. And I think it's because these risers here are probably off a little bit, and that kind of threw it off. Same thing on this side, not as bad, but this one's kind of pointed towards the rear. If you'll notice my steering, I've got it as straight as I can get it. So we've got to address that. So what I'll do is I'll come up with some type of a straight edge to run across the top of that axle or bottom, so we can kind of eyeball it. And then on the tie rods, this is a sleeve. We're going to break this sleeve loose here with that nut, and then with this nut, that will allow us to turn this sleeve and set the correct toe. So let's get started on that. Let's try to clean up some of these threads here. Put a straight edge over the top of the axle. You can see it's directly in line with the axle. And if you kind of follow that out, you can see how far off this hub is. And on this side, we're getting close. Let's see. Yeah, I think we may need to come in just a little. So let's come in just a little more with it. I think that's pretty close. That looks good to me. All right, we tighten these back down. All right, folks, that's a wrap on the front end. I'm gonna get cleaned up and retooled, and we'll get started on the back. Oh, I forgot. The last thing you need to do is reattach your shocks to these shock risers on each side. I'm not doing that yet because I've got new shocks that I'm going to install here. All right, as far as the hardware for the rear, basically you have 2 pieces for each side, and you have 4 bolts and nuts for each side. This block is going to go on, it's got a pitch to it, so that lower part of the pitch is going to the front. And then this spring plate here, you can see the spring plate, that's part of the axle. That's welded onto the axle with the U-bolts coming up through it there. We're going to bolt the lower part of this to that spring plate, and then we're moving the axle and the springs to the top of this block. And then we use the U-bolts to put that plate on there, and then our shock will mount right there in that hole. All right, now we need to support the back axle. All right, so a good example of what not to do. I should have taken these U-bolts out first before we even started with the springs. We wouldn't have had that problem. I don't know what I was thinking, but there we go. All righty, so let's go ahead and bolt these brackets down, that pitch to the front. keep these a little loose until I get the springs back on, because we got to get that nut in the bottom of the spring in the top of that bracket, and if we're off a few millimeters it may not fit. Alright, for the other side I'm going to go ahead and drop that spring, and we already have the U-bolts out. So I have this side of the axle supported now with another jack, and actually the axle is sitting on both of the jacks now. It's off the spring. So we have the spring plates loosely bolted now on both sides. So I'm going to go and get the springs on both sides. Alright folks, the springs are on. I've got sun shining here in the garage, so it's getting kind of tough to film. Alright, so all we need to do now is raise the axle. And what we want now is this spring plate to come up to the bottom of the spring. And on the bottom of that spring there's a nut. You see the nut there, or the stud. And on the bottom side there's a nut. See if I can get you a look at that. We want that nut to sit down inside of the hole here on the spring plate. So we'll just maneuver the axle until we get those holes seated, or that nut seated in the holes, and then we'll be good to go for our U-bolts and spring plate. Alright, so I've got the spring seated on both sides. Alright, so now I guess the spring plate here is going to go on like that. But I'm going to assume that that bracket's going to set this direction, because if you see our old shock mount, it's out to the rear here. So it's only logical that it'll go out to the rear on this side. My U-bolts are probably longer than what you guys are dealing with if you have your factories. And remember, we still have to tighten the bottom here. I kind of left those loose. I still have to tighten the springs down as well. So I know I have the benefit of coming through the top here with a really long extension to get these, which is, I'm grateful for that. Otherwise, you guys are in here right now with knuckle busters trying to get these tight. Well guys, that is about it. Got everything tightened down and the lift kit is installed. I'll get it on wheels here in a few minutes. My shocks are remember that I've still got to put shocks on the rear, so you'll be doing that to finish yours up, but I won't do mine right now. But otherwise, it is completely finished. She stands on all fours. It's slightly sloping to the front end, but when I get the batteries in there, it should level out. I installed the battery tray today, the new tray. The lift kit looks great, except for those small tires, wheels. Still waiting on shocks. All right, my next steps is to install the controller, put the motor on. I got my motor back from Plum Quick. It's right here. It's the Bandit upgrade. It's supposed to add about 30% more torque and 30% more speed. We'll see. Folks, thanks for watching. I hope the video helped you out some. And please subscribe. Please hit the like button. I'll have more videos coming on this cart. I actually have another couple of videos on my channel on the same cart. You guys take care.